Hi everyone, I'm Clare Muscutt, reporting for UC Today, and today I'm joined by Martin Taylor, co-founder and deputy CEO of Redwood Technologies Group. And today we're going to be talking about how agent experience drives customer experience. Welcome to the show, Martin. How are you today?
Very good, thanks. It's a nice sunny day, as you can see behind me.
Yeah, lovely. So to kick off, and by way of introduction, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, sure. So I co-founded a company called Redwood Technologies Group a long time ago, back in the 90s when I was in my early 20s. We're best known for our Content Guru organization. That's probably the one most of you will come across. But yeah, we are and always have been about communication technologies. But nowadays, that's mainly around the cloud and the contact center customer experience. But it's taken many forms over the years. We were behind a lot of the TV voting of the noughties, things like Big Brother and Pop Idol. That's where we learned about doing things at scale. We were very early into cloud. In 2005, when we set up Content Guru, it wasn't even called cloud yet. But we knew if we made this big system and we multi-tenanted it, that hundreds or even thousands of organizations could share the same platform, and that was going to be a much better place to be as a business than making and selling the solutions, which is what we've been doing for the previous decade. So kind of within the company, I started out writing games and things when I was about 10 or so, but they're always, even from the very beginning, were much more capable technical people in the organization. So my role has always been more around the kind of product design and commercialization aspects. So really positioning the business. So that meant, for example, designing what became cloud concept, scaling up what this platform would look like, how big it would need to be, what would go on it, and coming up with this name Storm, which has become somewhat popular now, as well as being a kind of expensive to maintain trademark.
I can imagine a lot of people are after that one.
They are, yes.
Awesome. And in terms of just that word, the cloud, for those of us who are less technical, what are the advantages of using cloud technologies for content?
Yeah, well, the cloud is, by definition, a bit nebulous, because what it really means is you've got a lot of big servers in multiple data centers. We use about 16 different data centers around the world. I think we've got 4 here in the UK. And really, with the cloud, it means that the service can be offered quite separately to the volume of users on it. So yeah, we don't mind if you join a Content Guru and you want to take on a Storm service and you want to double the number of people who use it. It doesn't mean we send some engineers along to a data center, we plug in some servers or some blades or a new router or anything like that. Yeah. It's all virtualized. So we know there are some physical constraints ultimately on the platform size, but we work in the background keeping ahead of all of that. So we carry out about 400 upgrades per month on our platform so that our customers don't have to.
Wow, that's amazing. And is Storm and Cloud connected?
Yeah, well, when we came up with the Storm name, it was really about this idea of disruption. And we thought, well, Storm is a kind of cloudy name, even though it's not called cloud yet. We'd always used to draw a cloud on a network diagram to mean the network. And so, it was I suppose everyone else did as well. That's why it's called the cloud. But we thought it means energy, it means disruption in a good way. And actually, at the very beginning, when we were doing the TV, it was also an acronym. The T was for television. It's long since forgotten now.
Lots of history there. So bringing us back to the role of contact centers and especially the agents within contact centers. So we know by definition, customer and employee experience are two halves of the same coin. But what is it about contact centers that means typically they have such high turnover and low engagement in comparison to other frontline service roles such as retail and hospitality? Yeah. Why is that?
Well, the contact center, I suppose, historically was a bit like a kind of Victorian mill or workhouse situation. Yeah, not quite the same, but the last kind of real high density, everyone sitting in rows type of environment. Often it was seen by the organizations behind these contact centers as a cost center. So as a cost center, that meant the focus was on cost reduction measures. Whereas obviously now it's all more a value center, it's more strategic. But back then, back then isn't very long ago, it meant cramming as many people as you could in there, in a big shed. And frankly, it wasn't a very appealing physical environment. And then if you were on inbound, the phone's ringing as soon as you finish the last call. The person on the other end of the line might be angry. You're probably dealing with people at their worst. They're undergoing problems, they're trying to transact, they're having difficulties, which is why they've come to the contact center. They weren't able to finish it all online, that's why they're talking to you. So a lot of responsibility, you're kind of at the point of this arrowhead. And a lot of people find that very stressful, and it is. If you're outbound, similarly, you're having calls presented, you're working out what it is you're going to be talking about, even as the phone's ringing at the other end, or maybe you don't even have that luxury. So it's not that surprising that we've been seeing churn rates of maybe even 70, 75% annually, which in an environment where you spend a quarter of a year learning how to do the job, I think the idea that 3/4 of you have gone by the end of that year is clearly unsustainable. So technology has a role to play in that. We talk a lot about omni-channel. So it means not just the phone ringing and you speaking, but it means all those written forms of communications, from simple ones like SMS to things like instant message chat or Facebook, Twitter, Trustpilot, WhatsApp, email. So we've got all these different forms of communication that the contact center worker, the agent, is being expected to deal with. And sometimes traditionally those were presented in different formats. So you had to learn all these different ways to tab between these different sources of these contacts that were coming through. Similarly, you might have trouble looking up the information you need. No one gets into being a contact center worker, particularly in a kind of help desk type environment, without wanting to help. And yet sometimes the technology was in the way of helping, having to put people on hold while you work out how to look up a piece of information. And when you come back, it's a couple of minutes later, they're a bit cross now because they had waited for a while before they even talked to you. So technology can do a lot about that. We can provide one interface for all the channels, so it's easy to work.
Easier.
Yeah, and again, you can integrate into all of those back-end information systems. We've done hundreds of them, not just CRM, but all the other kinds as well. And then you've got this simple interface, it's intuitive, and it's serving up the information you need. And I think increasingly, it's about adding more layers of automation to make that task even easier. So the latest things we're working on are listening to what the caller is saying in a phone call, making that into text using speech to text, natural language processing technologies, using their knowledge management to bring up information from available sources and put those on the screen. So while I'm talking about a refund of a ticket to a concert, we're already we're dredging up the information, and these are the terms of cancellation on that particular concert, so we can get straight into helping and doing that stuff that humans are really good at, rather than looking up
the process. That sounds really cool. So just to clarify, if I was a contact center agent, while the customer was talking in the background, this technology would be turning what they were saying into text that meant it was searchable automatically on the internet. Oh, wow. So I don't have to do any of that anymore. That's great.
No, so, we've long done that in email. So you send an email in to an insurer, for example, and most of those emails, they're not quite sure what they're all about. There may be useful information in the subject header, there might not. It might be a known address it's coming from, it might not. So easiest is just to read automatically the whole email. We see someone's talking about collision with a tree. So we think, okay, this is a motor claim. Let's put that in this queue. and maybe we can attach a priority to it. So it's really taking those digital ideas that really are quite well proven now and applying those to voice, making voice a digital channel. That's really the goal of all this.
Yeah, of course. And hopefully that will help relieve some of those pressures, like you said, about contact centres being seen as a cost centre, and
absolutely, it's got to be a value centre really.
Value
and I
centre,
think the whole lockdown period and the pandemic that really changed the role of the contact centre now. It really is the front door, the shop window, or whatever the analogy is that you want. That is the point at which you're going to be, as an organisation, fronting into your customers. So it's much more strategic even than other parts of the UC space, which some of them are more kind of back office or more internal. This is front and center, how you deal with customers and how you differentiate and create competitive advantage. So that then gets C-level attention and therefore investment and the kind of backing that's needed to make these transformations.
Yeah, it's good that you mentioned the current situation actually, because I guess my next question was really going to be about the fact that the location has changed for the agents in doing their role. A lot of them are like working from home now rather than in those big boxes that were the traditional contact centre. I was just going to ask, with all those really significant changes for the agents, how have you been seeing businesses responding to that in terms of agent experience?
Yeah, well, obviously, when coronavirus happened, the first priority for many contact centres was send the agents home. And in many cases, there was no history or procedure for doing that. So we sent thousands and thousands of agents home for all sorts of organisations. And let's get them answering the phone, or let's get them taking the emails. And actually, if you're in the cloud doesn't really care where the agent is. If they're at home, if they're in a contact center, if they're in a normal office, it doesn't really matter. So sending them home was priority one, keep the phones ringing. And that was easier said than done in some cases, particularly with some of the outsourcer locations like South Asia, for example. The home working environment is not necessarily always suitable for taking calls, particularly calls where there might be personally identifiable information, let alone calls where you actually transact. So the next step was, okay, how can we make the operation compliant? So we're observing GDPR rules, ISO 27001 rules, how we're going to be dealing with payments in particular. So it's all very well talking to someone, but can you take their money, which is ultimately what businesses exist to do. So running that PCI DSS level 1 operation from home, again, the cloud comes into its own because you don't need a no pens policy in order to have your certification. So it's really been about making everyone compliant, bringing the information to them. So access to a CRM, and then plumbing in things like workforce management, workforce optimization, so that we can see what people are doing at home. Because obviously part of the function of the contact center as this high density physical work environment has been that it's easy to see what people are doing. You can see if they're having a bit of a breather or if they're having a hard time on a call and maybe need help. So again, technology comes to the rescue there. We can look at people's screens, we can see what they're seeing as well as hear what they're saying. So that kind of over the shoulder type of monitoring. And again, that over the period of the lockdown, that morphed into auditing and performance management. We had one particular customer where they have some very high value workers in their outbound contact center who cost them, I think, £80 an hour. So pretty high cost. And when they did their first analysis, they found each one of those £80 an hour resources was dealing with 0.2 customers per hour. So you've got a £400 customer experience per call. So by employing the right technology tools and plumbing all of those in to that work from home environment, suddenly you've got similar visibility to when they're in your contact center. Agents have always wanted to work from home because the aforementioned unappealing physical environment, it's been seen as a kind of a reward or treat. Whereas I think now we can see for what it is, a really useful tool for the contact center operator. We've got customers who are seeing agents want to do like a 2-hour shift, maybe not an 8-hour shift. Let's do that peak kind of 9 a.m. period after the school run, and let's be on from 9 till 11, and then let's maybe pick up again at lunchtime, do 12:30 to 2. So we can have that very flexible rostering by having people at home, and we're not worrying about them commuting in or the size of our car park or other things that we've always worried about.
It's so interesting. I'm really looking forward to seeing some data points around the improvement in agent experience since they've been able to work from home. But I guess, as you said, it's relying on having the right technology to support them in doing that. So if they didn't have the I suppose the hardware and the software that enables them to do their job as well as they could do it in a physical environment, but with the benefits as you mentioned there, I can imagine it
and
would be more
actually some
stressful.
of the agents from home are able to do more than they could before. So one thing I'd highlight there is video. So video, since I've worked in this industry since the 90s, has always been the next big thing. Along with
finally
recognition, actually. Yeah, exactly. So now that we can't see one another face to face so much, there's an actual pressing need to have video. And again, luckily, the right technologies have come together at the right time. So we're seeing quite a lot of a situation where there's a normal telephone call taking place. The agent can decide that I need to upgun this to a video, either a one-way video or a two-way video, depending on the situation. So all they have to do is a couple of clicks on their interface. It sends a text message to the consumer's mobile device. They click on a link that's in there, and that's a one-use link. It opens up the camera, opens up the screen. So we can carry on having the voice conversation, but now there's this video element overlaid. That appears nice and big on my agent interface. Perhaps they can show me the broken boiler, or they could show me the damage to the car. And of course, this all started out in our NHS practice. So it was about how ill are you? Do we actually need to see you? Or let's have a look at that rash. So lots of things that would have required that in-person, now infection risk situation. Technology means that, okay, we found this really convenient to just use the mobile device to do this. So I think now we've seen that, we're not going to unsee it. So if you're a retailer, maybe you're a clothes retailer, and you're getting hammered by the more developed online retail propositions, you've got mainly people who are store staff. So again, you could use that same technology to make them de facto contact center agents who can actually show you the clothes in the store and have that very personalized dialogue with you. Again, contact center technology, but kind of breaking out of the contact center. I think that's one of the most exciting developments of this is, obviously we all want the customer experience, but if we can take that outside the four walls of the contact center and make this much more flexible experience. And also it's got to be a more enjoyable place to work. And we're going to drive down that churn. That churn's never been such an inconvenience as now, because you can't just go and get a new batch of people in, put an ad in the job center, you get 30 people through the door, you start your training program, because the through the door aspect is difficult. So you really want to keep those agents, particularly the best ones, and they're the ones who can walk most easily. So I think the onus is on contact center operators now to really make that agent experience the kind of new CX in a way.
I agree with you. Just a few things that I reflected on when you were talking there was an experience I had as a customer of my broadband provider, Vodafone. and I was having a terrible experience with my broadband continually dropping out, and I was trying to podcast and stuff, and I was just getting so frustrated. And I had one of those video conversations to assess the broadband connection in my home. So they did exactly that. I sent me a link. They could see what was going on in the hardware department, and it turned out it had never been fitted properly in the first place. But I was actually really wowed by that part of the experience, because it did feel like, you know, I can't explain this to you, but just by being able to look, they could do that.
Yeah, an old phrase, isn't it? A picture is worth 1,000 words.
Yeah, and like
we
with
could save 1,000 words. That's a perceptible cost benefit.
Yeah, no, definitely. And also with my doctors, because non-emergency appointments, they didn't want to see anybody. So that kind of triaging system moving to being either a call or a video call. And I agree with you. I don't think we're going to unsee this now. We're not going to go back. And actually, in a lot of ways, there's so much more convenience in these experiences that we've been having whilst we've been at home. So my next question really was about, as online channels become more dominant, what do you think the role of the agent is going to become?
Yeah, so I see the agent role growing and becoming different, really. So it's not going to be about the mass answering of basic questions, because we can do all those in an automated way now. And actually, we're steadily working up the pyramid in terms of automation to doing more and more complex questions. So again, back to your health example, in a service like NHS 111, the technology is now able to mainly find out who people are and what it is they need, pull up some records about them, even before they really join the queue proper. You can start to take the most urgent cases out, or perhaps those who need other services that can be delivered digitally. Let's take them out of the loop as well. Let us use natural language processing to listen to exactly what it is that they want, and start to categorize much more effectively. So by the time you, as the agent, are receiving that communication, it's reached a quite advanced stage, and it's really where automated can't do it anymore. And look, here's the information I've gathered from this consumer, and these are perhaps some things I'd like you to decide on. So I think the agent role will be being the human. Everyone likes the human, but B, it's deciding from among a number of choices that have been laid out in front. And by the fact of not having to ask who is your mother's grandfather's wife's maiden name, you're getting through a lot of that tedium that nobody likes being that machine. Humans aren't very good at being machine-like, at least most of us aren't anyway. So it's work fit for humans, supported by automation that doesn't mind chuntering through all of this data, doing the gathering, pulling up the information sources. So I think, returning to my earlier point, it's a different kind of agent. It's a more skilled role. It's requiring of empathy, and perhaps you might even have to have a friendly disposition because they can see you as well. I think it's a lot more difficult to be cross with someone when you can actually look at their face. You're not going to be quite as rude. Just as talking to someone, people are less rude than they are in a written communication. So I think we can get to a higher standard of civility as well. I think we've really achieved something.
Yeah, two-way empathy. That's awesome. So my final question really is kind of beyond the pandemic. What are the kinds of strategies that companies can employ to continue to improve the agent experience? So if we're going to have more people working from home, more technology that's sorting out the faff that humans don't like doing anyway, and enabling our agents to be more human and higher skilled, what kinds of strategies do you think the contact center businesses can employ going forward?
Yeah, so it's going to be a hybrid work environment now. I mean, I'm in the office today. Tomorrow I'm not in the office. But unlike what the government has said, it's not that I'm not going to work. So we're going to be working in this new way that's maybe going to be 2/3 in the centre and 1/3 away, or vice versa. So I think for the new contact centre, you're going to need technologies that support that model and that can cope with changes happening very suddenly. So there's a localized lockdown in your location. No problem. Here's all the data you need. You just carry on from home. So there will be minimal disruption when these kind of things happen. So I think we're looking at a future, as you said, with much more technological support for the agent, a more satisfying work environment, less tedium, and when new channels come on board, maybe there's a new social channel, it's just delivered to you, and you can hopefully more or less pick it up as you go along without a manual, but you'll be supported by people back at base doing the training with you, and kind of keeping an eye on you remotely, but not in a kind of George Orwell way, a supportive manner.
Awesome. Oh, it's been really great to talk to you today. Thanks for coming on the show.
It's been a real pleasure.
And just to thank everybody for watching along with us today. If you did enjoy the show, please drop us a like and subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks. Bye.